All right, we are live, and it is our month of March market update. And we are looking specifically at data from February. Fort Collins, at one point, we'll be looking at kind of single family detached home statistics, but at another point later on, we'll look at both condo, townhome, and single family detached homes. So we're coming to you live, come to you guys once a month, first Tuesday of every month, and then look back at how the prior month responded. So there's always some lead and lag indicators of the real estate market. And a lot of the things that we're looking at are lag indicators. And what that is like sales price. Well, if you think about the sales price, it is all of the homes that closed in February, which could have gone under contract in January or even December and just now closed in February. So really those prices are what people were willing to offer in January and December. And then same thing, all of that data, the days on market, months of supply, all of that is looking back. Things that we try to look forward to are mortgage applications, interest rates, pending home sales, and that gives us a little bit of foresight moving into it. But we're going to go ahead and share our screen and jump into today's information. So what I first looked at was February 2024 versus January, so month over month, and then looking against February 2023 and also February 2022. It wasn't until about March that interest rates really started to tick up. I closed an investment property in March of 2022, and it was an investment property interest rate, which is always about 0.5% worse than a homeowner. And I closed at 4.75%, put down a big chunk of change, and so got the most preferable rates at that time for an investment. And February, the interest rates definitely started to tick up, but then it was June, July that we saw those 6s and 7s. So I wanted to look at what the February market of this year looked like versus 2022, because in 2023, the name of the game was stagnation. People weren't excited to buy because interest rates were high, but they also weren't excited to sell because they're in a 3% mortgage. Fast forward 1 year later, and we're still at interest rates of around 6 to 6.5%. And it's becoming a little bit more normalized, and people's lives ultimately take shape and decisions have to be made. And so they're kind of coming to grips with the idea of selling their house, even if it means getting rid of that 3% mortgage and moving into a 6.5% mortgage. So looking at median sales price, and we're going to jump into a 12-month rolling average because I thought this was interesting. But actually a dip from January 2024, a dip from a year prior, and even a dip from 2 years prior, which I guess I'll just jump into it right now if you guys can see it. This is a 12-month rolling average of median sales price. And as you can see, really since August of 2022, we've been relatively flat. We had a good run up in the 2020, 2021 time period, a significant run up, but remained flat. And I didn't chart this out, but I'm going to come in here and I'm going to remove this real quick. I didn't chart this out because one of the things that Fort Collins has had historically is a appreciation rate of around 5.5% since the 1970s. Just kind of chugged along at 5.5%. We've had some down years, 2008 and 9, of down 0.5% and down 2%. We've had some bigger years of 10%, but on average, 5.5% since the 70s. But then 2020 and 2021 happened, and even the first half of 2022, where we saw these astronomical run-ups of prices, 20% type appreciation for 2 years in a row. And well, now we're starting to see this plateau, and it's really what I'm going to see. I don't necessarily see any huge dips of prices. Now we saw it go from 620 to 590 or 607 to 590, but what I believe will be played out, and of course predictions are only worth the seconds that I spend on them, but we saw this huge run up, but then a plateau. And if we have a huge run up and then a plateau and this historic appreciation of 5.5%, it's going to take time while we are plateaued to meet that historic average of 5.5%. I believe we'll get back to that over time, but are going to sue. I don't see any huge dips in prices, but it is possible. And so I'm not ruling that out. But let's jump back into some of the data. Closed sales, ultimately a indicator of demand. And January, things are always going to be slower than February because things are going under contract in late November, December, holidays, Christmas breaks, bad weather. So, that's to be expected. But we want to look at closed sales of this year versus last year, a little bit up and still quite a bit down, though, from February 2022. Because remember, in January of 2022 and December of 2022, interest rates were still in the very low threes, and people were still very much inclined to buy and offer multiple offers on properties. But new listings, this was the golden handcuffs that we were talking about all of last year, that people were essentially refusing, or not refusing, but deciding not to sell because they didn't want to give up their 3% mortgage and go buy a 6.5%, 7%, 8% mortgage in October of 2023. But what we were seeing is last year we had this very anemic market, just very few people comparatively wanting to sell. 20% fewer people wanting to sell last year than in 2022. But we actually had more listings on the market this year, 2024, than February 2022, which suggests that, historically, let's just say 126 is kind of the norm. We have a little bit of an uptick, 6 extra houses, or, a 5% increase. That's pretty decent math, I would have to say, right off the top of my head. But about a 5% increase from 2022, suggesting that these people waited throughout 2023 to list their homes, hoping that interest rates would come down. They didn't. And now life moves on, and they're just going to be a little bit more normalized to that idea of 6% interest rates. So they're selling. Under contract, again, this is an idea of what demand is currently. These homes have gone under contract probably in the last 30 days. Relatively decent as far as that goes comparatively, 2024 to 2022. Much higher than 2023. Again, people weren't excited to buy houses in 2023 because interest rates were where they were. And, it was the hope that they were going to come down. So demand was down, but so were listings. So we saw just kind of this stagnation of the market. But right now we're seeing a more uptick in demand, saying people, again, are used to the 6%. Let's go ahead and buy and move forward. Homes for sale. This is a huge difference between 2022 and 2024, because in 2022, again, people were just dying to get into houses at 3% interest rates, multiple offers. So very few homes were on the market that it was dog eat dog competition out there, and they just ate up anything they possibly could. But we are also higher than we were in February 2023, suggesting that inventory is starting to tick up. We are at a 1.3 month supply of inventory. Historic 6 months is balanced. I've never since 2013 in this career seen a balanced market. But we did have that closer in 2008 and 9 when prices were a little bit flat. But I wanted to jump in here also and show you guys days on market. We're starting to tick back up into the high 30s, low 40s. This is a 12-month rolling average, and which is suggesting that, hey, during this madness of a time here when interest rates were falling, days on market were absolutely plummeting. As soon as a property hit the market, it was under contract with multiple offers. Now we are seeing multiple offers on homes right now. We absolutely are. Inventory is just so few and far between, or still historically speaking, few and far between, that homes that are priced well, in good condition, and marketed properly are going under contract and going under contract relatively quick. But we are seeing an uptick in days on market. Alrighty, the next thing that I wanted to jump into was Fort Collins versus Denver versus Colorado Springs. So obviously, we work with a ton of individuals relocating from all over the country and world. And generally, most people are either sold on Fort Collins, they would like Boulder, but it's too expensive. They're considering Denver, they're considering Colorado Springs, and kind of go up and down that front range. So it's an interesting kind of juxtaposition of how our local real estate markets are doing against one another. Median sales price, as you guys saw above, we're actually, and this is February 2024 versus February of 2023. Median sales price down 1.7%, but Denver is actually up 7% versus 1 year ago. And Colorado Springs down 2.2%. Closed sales, again, suggesting demand, were up 3.3%, down 2.2% in Denver, and down 1.6% in Colorado Springs. New listings, again, up 21%, up 37%, up 19%. People are deciding, you know what, screw it, we got to sell our house. We're going back, moving in with our mom and dad, or buying a house and, back home, or whatever that might be. Those life decisions are happening. Under contract, our demand is also increasing quite a bit, except Colorado Springs. Colorado Springs is like saying, hey, and no hate on Colorado Springs, because I know I've got some friends and family that live in and around the area, but they're like, hey, we ain't buy. Colorado Springs was attractive at 3% mortgage rates in a less expensive house, but now houses are more expensive, but interest rates are still 6%. Something's got to give for me to move to Colorado Springs. So I'll do respect Colorado Springs, but you are not seeing the same love as far as the demand Fort Collins and Denver is seeing with the stagnation of interest rates over the last few very months. Homes for sale increased across the board. So this is, again, a direct correlation between new listings, what's under contract, kind of the base inventory as well. Months of inventory, kind of the same thing as homes for sale. Big jump in Denver and Colorado Springs and Fort Collins. But again, we are so low. These are 1 to 2 months worth of inventory across those three. So still very low inventory for all three locations, and nothing too. The biggest thing I would have to say of note is under contract, Colorado Springs is actually not seeing a direct correlation with, or a same increase of new listings and homes under contract that you kind of see here with Fort Collins, with 21% increase in listings, but also 22% increase in homes under contract. And even to a lesser extent, Denver of 37% more new listings and 17% more homes under contract. So it's actually about 20% each. So I guess you could kind of say they're the same. There's more listings than there are inventory. So inventory will peak or pop up a little bit more than demand is. And so possibly, again, some stagnation, flatlining of prices in Fort Collins. And then now let's jump down to over the last 2 weeks. The last 2 weeks, I've been having conversations with sellers. We had a listing appointment today, and it just has anecdotally felt like this faucet has turned on the real estate market. We're getting multiple offers on homes, homes coming on the market fast, leaving the market quick. It feels very 2021, 2020-ish, which really is not my favorite time. During that time, our team averaged 4 offers per client until we got a home under contract, and God knows how many showings. And when I talk with buyers specifically, as a seller, it was phenomenal. It was easy, put the house on the market. Obviously the biggest thing that you would do as far as a seller at that point is just compare net sheets of your offers. You have 4, 5, 6, 7 offers more that you would compare. All right, this is cash. This one's offering concessions. This one's finance. This one's this down payment. This is this type of financing. This is how long this house takes to close. So really comparing all those, talking to lenders, it wasn't necessarily easy per se as far as that, but as far as selling a house, ultimately it was going to get sold and sold quick. For a buyer, when you decide to buy a house, you really have 2 big decisions to make. 1, financially, can I afford it? And 2, emotionally, do I love it or like it enough to live in the house for the next 3, 4, 5, 10 plus years? And when you have to do that 3, 4 times, it is exhausting. So I'm hoping that we don't get too much more into that. I don't think we will, just because homes are still at that price they were 2 years ago, and interest rates are not at 3%, they're at 6%. So mortgages are absolutely more expensive. But looking at the last 2 weeks, 87 homes. Now, this is what I was talking about a little bit earlier. This is condos, townhomes, and single-family detached houses. 87 homes came onto the Fort Collins market, and 38 of those homes went under contract, or about 44%. Now, this is not the average or median price of what came on the market. This is the average and median price of what went under contract. So median sales price was $575, an average of $664. Now, there can be a few of those $2 million price points that really pump that average up, but median of $575 is suggesting that people are definitely looking more for affordability and mortgage. Our median sales price is flatlining, if not has stepped down a little bit, and will probably remain so. And this is not even considering last month. If you guys watched our market update last month, I really dove into concessions. This month, I'm not necessarily doing that, but these numbers also don't take into consideration concessions that are given. And concessions can be anywhere between 1, 2, 3, 4%. I mean, we saw some that are significant that are used to help buy down interest rate and closing costs. 39 homes had price reduction, and 11 of those homes went under contract. And of those homes that went under contract, of the 11 homes that went under contract, the average was 643, median, again, 580. That's this honey hole price point right now that it seems Fort Collins is getting the most bang for your buck. The size, lot size, age of house, mortgage rate that is attainable. But this honey hole of 580 is definitely right around. Now, the price reduction that these homes had to have prior to going under contract was about $10,000 or 2.2% of the original list price. Now, I talk to our listing and sellers all the time about different theories of price reductions if that time comes. Generally, anywhere between 2 to 5%, depending on your strategy of how you went onto the market. If you get either 10 showings or 30 days on market without an offer, is my rule of thumb that you really need to start considering a price reduction. And depending upon those 10 showings, feedback of, hey, there just needs to be some updates to the carpet or paint, or the backyard's just too small, or we really didn't like that there was a hot tub, we want the hot tub gone, versus it's overpriced versus overpriced. That would dictate where in that 2 to 5% range you're going to want to have your price reduction be. If it's something that you can't necessarily fix, but for the right price, somebody's going to buy it, I lean more towards that 2 to 3% reduction. If it's suggested that it's overpriced by a majority of those that are giving feedback, that 4 to 5% is really what's going to take to move the needle enough for those people to then consider it a potential property at a different price point. But what this is suggesting is that $10,000 or 2.2% for those 11 homes is what it took, and at that price point, to sell your house. So if you're on the market, or if you're working with us and we're close to that 580, you don't need to do a huge reduction, but maybe 590 to 580, and then you get to go under contract. 63 homes sold in the last 2 weeks. Median sales price, $549. $2,000 from original list to final sales price, or 0.61% off. And they were on the market for 65 days, which means they went under contract at the beginning of January or end of December. Interest rates at that time were starting to tick down. October of 2023 was our peak, 8%. I had a listing on the market at that time. There were 6 other houses in the neighborhood, and it was tough. It was absolutely grueling. We were competing against 5 other houses in the same neighborhood. Interest rates were at 8%, and buyer activity became a little bit more anemic. But at that point, they started to kind of taper off and kind of come down a little bit. And interest rates, when they actually did a pretty decent dip at the middle of January, because we put a property under contract. We got it under contract at 5.375%. Sorry, we put it under contract, and then we locked our mortgage at 5.375%. And right after that, interest rates popped back up. They're currently between 6 and 6.5%, depending. We'll get to that here in a little bit. But we were ecstatic that we got this property under contract and locked in at 5.375. That was with the seller helping 2 points, or roughly 2 percentage points of the loan value, to get us to that point. But still, I mean, historically, I'm happy at a 5.375. I think the real estate market operates at a more healthy level when interest rates are between 5 to 6%. So 5.5%, I think, is a very healthy long-term 30-year fixed mortgage. All right, there's a couple other things that I want to talk about, which is the difference of renting versus owning. And what are those conversations that people are having? Because right now you can absolutely get a massive discount to rent versus to buy. I have a house that is on the southeast side of Fort Collins. It's a rental, $3,000 a month for rent. If we were to put it on the market for $660,000, and let's just put zero down, because I was just working with a client that we were looking at a $675,000 house and zero down VA loan. Mortgage rate, or the principal and interest portion of your mortgage, would be about $3,700. And then taxes and insurance. Taxes can be, in Fort Collins, if you're not in a metro district, about 0.6 to 0.7% of your purchase price. And property insurance is going to be about 0.5% of your purchase price. So with those two numbers that we're looking at, roughly about $3,000, $5,000 roughly a year for your mortgage, which is going to pump your mortgage payment up by another $600 to $700. So to buy a house without, well, this one would have PMI, but let's just not consider that right now. To buy that house in Southeast Fort Collins at $675, 0% down, you're going to be right around $4,500 to $4,700 versus renting that house for $3,000 a month. I don't think we're too far off on our market rates, because we actually just increased it when our last tenant moved out. But the conversation that people are having to have is, what price point does it make sense? And what's the timeline that it needs to make sense for you to buy versus rent? Because shoot, $1,700 a month saved. Now, granted, you'd still have, $1,700 a month saved as a renter versus an owner. The conversation I did have a conversation with one of our clients who's kind of looking at selling $1 million property and buying a $1.5 million property, but he's locked in at 2.875% with his current house, and he'd be at 6.7% for the new house, because it would be a jumbo loan. And there's this huge delta. And the conversation that I was having with him is, all right, so essentially the theory would be, you're hoping either prices come down enough to make that mortgage payment make sense at 6.5, 6.75%, or if interest rates come down enough, 5.5%, that the prices are going to remain stagnant, that the mortgage payment makes more sense. And there's lots of game scenarios that you can play of, well, if interest rates come down to 5.5%, 5%, do those prices go from 1.5 to 1.6 and 1.7? And or how much do homes have to come down in value for it to make sense? Or do you feel comfortable buying at 6.5%? And those are conversations that I can't answer for you. Those are conversations that are future predicting, because of course the gamble of buying today, the people are buying today, what gamble they're making is that interest rates are going to come back down to 5.5. I don't ever think we're going to see, maybe, who knows, 4s, or definitely not 3s, but you never know. And then they'll refinance their purchase that they made for $580,000, $575,000 at a new interest rate of 5.5%. And all of a sudden they've saved themselves $1,000 a month or $750 a month, depending on the price point, of course. So those are all conversations that you have to have. And if we rent for the next year, yeah, sure, we're throwing away $3,000, but will we save that $1,700, stock it away for a bigger down payment? And will the market change in our favor? These are all games and gambles that you've got to play with yourself. And, of course, open to conversations, but a lot of that is just, gambles. Because right now the Fed suggested that we were going to have a rate cut, or rate cuts, possibly up to 6 this year. And now conversations are there going to be any rate cuts? So it's really a conversation of what your comfort level is, which a lot of this is based off of affordability. And affordability is based off of your price and your interest rate. Interest rates right now, I was quoted yesterday for 5% down, 760 FICO score, a conventional loan of 6.625%, FHA of 6%, and VA of 6.125%. So it's definitely not as high as it was, or not as low as it was definitely in 2020, 2021. But we're at 6.6% for a 5% down conventional loan. And it's definitely not deterring buyers right now. We're seeing buyer activity very strong and very active early in the spring. And as we get closer to that April, May time period, we're going to see more buyers come into the market, but also more listings. All right, we're coming to the end of our show. I'm going to take some questions and answer some of these right now. Let's go here. Dawson asks, have you noticed a price range that sells faster, for instance, houses below 550 or houses above 950 with the middle ground taking longer to sell? Let's jump in here real quick. All right, so we'll look at monthly and we'll do your price range of 750,000. Oh, we'll go 500,000 to 599. Days on market, median. So those are taking, and there's not a ton of 500 to 599 houses, but there's definitely some. So 76, 63 days. And what was your other question? You asked about houses above 950. Okay. So we're at 76 and 63 days. Let's go 950. Whew, that's interesting, isn't it? They're in February at least. Let's just look at 3 years so we have a better view. February at least, it dropped all the way to 30. Now, what you're going to see is also much fewer sales, right? So yeah, we only have 11 sales. So the data is a little skewed comparatively to 33 homes that sold. So we had 3 times as many homes sell at that price point, but still days on market is interesting of 63 versus 30 in February, but all the way up to 94 in January. So yes, there is a difference, but actually not in the favor you would think. You would think that homes at a lesser price point would sell faster versus homes at a higher price point. And I did talk with somebody yesterday, a friend and client that we were asking about. We were talking about homes between 750 to $1 million and $1 million to 1.5, the percentage of people who buy it cash. And coincidentally, they were both at 32% of homes in those both price ranges, 32.1 and like 32.6, were selling cash. And so what it suggests is those individuals, maybe at 950 and above, are still seeing value in the houses. They're getting more bang for their buck, and they're moving quicker, potentially buying it cash. And when they come on, they know what they want, and they move quickly to get it, versus $550,000, more options, a more discerning buyer that is looking for value at that $550,000 to $600,000 price point, that it needs to be turnkey ready, the condition needs to be solid, and the price needs to be well. Otherwise, I'm not going to move on because I'm going to look at our inventory that's popping up, that we were at 175 versus 133 a year ago. And I've got an extra 40 houses to look at this year versus last. So they can be a more discerning buyer than they were last year. And therefore, time on market, days on market is increasing for that price point. Somebody asked, how many beds, baths is your rental for $3,000 a month? That is 3 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, 3,200 square feet with a unfinished basement. So about 2,200 square feet finished with 1,100 square feet unfinished, 3 bedroom, 2 bathroom, 3 bedroom, 3 bathroom. Super nice house. It was actually my old house that we turned into a rental, and love it. I can't believe that it rents for $3,000. It's disgusting. My mortgage on that is $1,800 because I bought it in 2013 with a 3.25% mortgage that I never thought I would see the light of day coming again, but we did see it. And so, and I think we're at market for that house as far as rents. It could be $3,200 to $3,400, but we've got a phenomenal renter in there, and so we'll keep them there. All right, I don't see any more questions. Definitely paying attention. Things that I'm paying attention to this year, just so you guys know, are the land use code, U+2. There are not super favorable codes coming in for landlords, which who knows how that works at a state level, in the sense of, do landlords sell rents? There's fewer rentals, rents increase. My ultimate theory for all you guys that are still on right now isn't that mortgages are going to decrease. It's that rents are going to increase to be a closer point at mortgages than they currently are. So you're going to see this increase in rents to make it less desirable to rent to buy. But for right now, there's a huge delta, and it makes a lot of sense to rent versus buy. It just depends on your timeline and your desire to be in a location. Anything really 4 years and under, if your timeline, if you're uncertain about that, renting is definitely probably the way you want to go. If you're 4 or 5 years, as far as your time to be here, buying and enjoying some of that appreciation that will ultimately occur, depending on how long that plateau is that we talked about, will happen. So 4 years or more, buying is probably something that you should seriously consider. 4 years or less, definitely consider renting. All righty, I don't see any more questions. Appreciate you guys engaging. Definitely makes it more fun at the end and engaged throughout, but hopefully this information was enjoyable for you guys. Watch Izzy's video that just came out, living in Wellington. She is crushing it. She's also getting married this Saturday. So if you see her or friends with her on Instagram, whatever that might be, wish her well and congratulations. Very thankful and grateful for my team, Sukup Real Estate Services. Everyone's doing extremely well, and I'm very proud of them. So it definitely takes a community, and like you guys watching and enjoying this or engaging this, hopefully you enjoy it. But thank you for all your support. All right, guys, enjoy the rest of the day.